What's up everyone, Alyssa Knight here, and if this is our first time meeting, I'm the host of KnighTV, and this show is all about hacking and securing embedded systems, and this is the month of Elastic. I'm going to be doing nothing but content on blogging, creating videos, and live streaming in the month of August on Elastic. Today we have a very special guest with us, James Spiteri. He's the Global Solutions Architect at Elastic. Elastic has just announced a groundbreaking announcement at Blackhat Briefings. They are going to be taking Endgame, the company that they acquired, as an EDR solution, and they have now announced that they're going to be releasing it for free. In the 20 years of working in cybersecurity, I've never heard of a company doing this where they've acquired a product and paid a significant amount of money for it, then made it free. So this is not going to be a watered down, fat-free version of Elastic Endpoint. It is going to be the fully featured Endgame EDR that is now free for commercial use, for personal use. Whatever use you've got, you can use it for free. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the challenges you might face in migrating to the Elasticstack from a traditional SIEM, as well as answer any questions you might have on Kibana, Logstash, Beats. Can I support or bring in any kind of network telemetry data or system telemetry data in the Elasticstack? All of those questions are going to get answered today from James Spiteri from Elastic. So if this is an episode you've been looking forward to, sit back, relax, grab that cup of joe, and join me for a very exciting and special episode of KnighTV. Greg went out looking for a hack. I gotta say, James, you are my favorite person at Elastic. We had a great time in the last show together. I really appreciate you coming back on the show. As you can see from my articles that I've written, the videos I've published, I'm drunk on Elastic Kool-Aid. I love what you guys are doing over there. I wanted to have you back on the show as an opportunity for you to tell the Elastic story, tell your story. And some of the exciting things that are going on at Elastic. You recently announced a new offering that's going to be coming out, and I'd love for you to talk about that. You announced that at Blackhat just last week. So there's a lot of exciting things going on in the Elastic story, and I would love for you to talk about that. For those of our viewers who don't know who James Spiteri is, can you introduce yourself? Tell them who you are, tell more about yourself. I think they'd love to learn more about you individually and about the company.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alyssa. I mean, it's great to be back on the show. So hi, everyone. Just a quick about myself. So my name is James. I am a security specialist at Elastic on the pre-sales team. So essentially what I do is I help any people who want to use our technology for anything security analytics related. I typically help answer questions, design architectures for them. And my background is entirely security operations. So I've been doing this, pretty much my whole career. So the last 15 years or so. I've got to use several different technologies. Was an Elastic customer myself twice before I joined the company, just about 2 years ago now.
Oh, wow. You started out as a customer. What
did, yeah.
What company were you at when you were a customer?
So that's a great question. So I'm based in the tiny island of Malta. So I don't have big names on my resume. So I'm very lucky and privileged to be at Elastic. I was a partner of Elastic for a while. So I was part of a startup that resold MSSP services. That was probably the first time I was a customer. Previous to that, I did spend some time in Dublin working for a big financial services organization that ran Elastic. And then the last time I was a customer of Elastic, I worked for a company called RS2 Software. They write banking software, basically. So big impact, small name, but they have a big impact because of what they do. And Elasticsearch and the Elasticstack basically is at the heart of their security operations there now. But I've been also an open source user and a free user before that as well. So my first interaction with Elastic was free, as most users start out. But then I just wanted the benefit of support. I wanted the benefit of the commercial features, and I ended up becoming a customer. I grew to love the product so much that I went to Elasticon as a customer back in early February 2018, I think it was. And basically, I made some intros there, and now I'm part of Elastic. So
Can you talk about Elastic, the company, and its product stack, and what exactly what is your product offering?
Sure. So, Elastic as a company, it's fairly young. So it was founded back in 2012 by our now CEO, Shai Bannon. And what Shai wanted to do was solve the search problem. So Elastic as a company started out trying to solve the problem of how difficult it was to implement search inside of a product. So here we come as an open source company. We introduce a free product, which tries to solve the problem of having a scalable, easy to build on search platform. So you probably use Elastic every day without knowing. So like if you use Wikipedia, if you use Uber, Airbnb, like all these platforms are using Elastic under the hood for search. And it became extremely popular. It became extremely popular because of, developers found it easy, and it was very performant. You can basically scale it out to your heart's content. There was no restriction there. And, the use cases started to roll from there. So like we never planned to use it for security. So when the company started, the whole point was let's solve the search problem. But just because of how performant it was and how much it scaled, people just said, what's going to happen if I throw security events in there? What's going to happen if I throw log events or metrics? And it just rolled out from there. So then we started acquiring and joining forces with other open source projects. So this is where the actual stack came together. So we'll talk about things like Kibana, we'll talk about things like Logstash and Beats. Those were all other open source projects that started to build on top of Elasticsearch. So now what we offer as a company is we basically consolidated, Elasticsearch as a technology and the stack into we have three main pillars where we focus on, both in terms of our customer base, but also sort of from an engineering standpoint where we focus our efforts. One is obviously it's going to be that search use case. So we have the concept of enterprise search. So any search use case, but also thinking of typical what Google search appliances used to do. So like searching across an entire organization, whether that's G Drive, Wikis, Dropbox, you name it, consolidate all that search. Security is a massive focus for us now. So, obviously we'll talk about things like SIEM and security analytics, but also things like endpoint, which we'll get into extreme detail in. And then observability. So the concept of bringing logs, metrics, application traces, uptime data all into the same platform. That's sort of like what we try to focus on now, but then there's also all the different stack features. So we like to say 3+1 because there's those three main product pillars, but then all the stack stuff as well. So we have concepts of being able to search across different clusters and different platforms, replicating that data, all the cluster technology like high availability and replication. So there's all those use cases too. So there's just so much to talk about, but those are sort of what we tend to focus on now and where we're focusing our engineering efforts.
So one of the things that I talk about a lot is the amount of unstructured data in the enterprise now. I think the last report I saw that was about 80 to 90% of the enterprise data now is unstructured. A lot of organizations now moving from SQL databases with structured data in it to data lakes, right? Do you think that that's been a large reason behind the success of Elastic, the impetus behind that success? Because it's no secret that Elastic is gaining in wild popularity. A lot of the CISOs that I work with, a lot of the companies that I talk to on the Briar and Thorn side at our MSSP are, hey, what's this about Elk? What's this about Elastic? I'm tired of paying these high ingest fees for data in my traditional SIEM. Tell me about Elastic. Do you think that there's a big reason for that? What is the drive? What is the push?
So I'd say unstructured data is one of them, and it started from there because, again, even in how my journey started with Elastic, I just wanted a better way, a more performant way to search through the mess of data I had to deal with. And I didn't necessarily need to care about, where the data sits or where the data lies. I could have just started off with getting the data, putting it in Elastic, and just running a free text search, something we'd expect from a search engine, not necessarily a security tool or a SIEM. So if you think about things like, I don't know, like PowerShell script blocks or something like that, where just random blobs of text, where you wouldn't even expect to have them in your SIEM because it's just ridiculously expensive, both computationally, but also perhaps at the license cost. But you can put them in Elastic for free and just search them to your heart's content. Even if you're just looking for a specific keyword, you don't have to worry about the data to start with. You can organize it after if you want. But at least I have the ability to search through that. without worrying about it. So I'm not a DBA, I'm not a developer by nature. So last thing I'd want to do to search through data is set up a database, normalize it, do all that stuff, put in a schema. No, I just have a blob of data, I need to search it fast. If I don't like it, I can start again, reindex it, manipulate it, do whatever I want, but at least I had the ability to just search it, and at speed. So like, it's one thing being able to search data, it's another being able to search for it in seconds, because that's another thing. Like, I remember when I had initially looked at Elastic, I said, I'm going to put this to the test. And for me back then, a terabyte worth of log data, I remember it was Blue Code proxy logs. I chucked those into a single node Elasticsearch instance, and I tried to do the same search that I typically do on the current platform I had back then. It took like 2 seconds on Elastic. It took like 5 minutes in the other platform. I'm like, okay, this is something I need to look at. Even before any of the features that existed that we have today, I just was so impressed by the speed of search. It was unheard of for me. I never saw anything like it. So that's actually, that's still at our roots, right? The main problem we needed to solve is action your data. Like, even if we had to start with no SIM or security features, like, at least you can start actioning your data. In fact, we started off as a popular threat hunting platform. Basically, grab all the data, just being able to search it. Augment your existing technology if needs be, because up until 18 months ago, we didn't have a SIM offering. So that's how we typically used for it. And it's a really interesting story, because we as a company understood how many organizations were using us for that. And we just said, you know what, we want to make this experience better. So that's when we decided to formally enter the market and build a security product on top of the stack. So it just fell into that because of the way we're being used. And unstructured data is one of them. Cost is another. But I would say even like there was no restrictions, right? Maybe back then it was potentially harder to get data into Elastic because we didn't have the amount of ingestion modules we have today. But there was a way to do it. And there was a way to do it without having to think too much about it. Like, okay, yes, later on you might want to structure it better or whatever, but there was a way to bring it in. And either by just Googling it, so like the community played a massive part in that. I could literally just say, like, go into Google and type technology X, space Elastic, space GitHub, and I'm going to find a project that tried to do this, and I can reuse it because that's open source. And that was, for me, game changing. So like all these things combined really accelerated this. And then, I mean, more recently, we've, getting our footprint out there, expanding our use cases. You mentioned, we joined forces with Endgame just over 9 months ago now or so. And, that also accelerated that. So there's been a lot going on. And to be honest, it's such a good time to be at Elastic right now. There's so much stuff being worked on, so much stuff going on, that it's really exciting.
Yeah, your guys' growth rate is just scary. I mean, you guys are, like I said, you guys are becoming a household name very quickly. Even if someone is intimidated by learning the search query language and trying to look through their unstructured data, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys actually have a lot of free training out there for learning, the query language. And, it doesn't have to be this scary sort of Greek, that you have to learn. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, there's even a wizard that helped guide you through, forming search queries. Yeah.
So just in case people aren't aware, so the initial, language for Elasticsearch is something called Query DSL. So it was actually an abstraction on top of Apache Lucene. So at the core, Elasticsearch is actually based on Apache Lucene. What we've been doing over the years is really trying to simplify that. So even in the back end, we'll be using Query DSL. You can even just start off in a search bar, typing in a single word of text, and we'll take care of translating that into Query DSL. We have expanded into adding things like SQL support. So we have really extensive SQL support. So if you're a SQL developer and you're comfortable writing SQL queries, you can actually use Elasticsearch with SQL. We added the Kibana query language. So like just literally trying to make it as easy as possible. There's autocomplete, there's suggestions. So it's not unique to Elastic, so other vendors do it, of course, but like we really wanted to abstract the query DSL from those who don't want to write query DSL. If you did, that's absolutely fine. We're not going to stop you. But especially in the security world, most people they don't want to go down to that level, which is totally understandable for us. There's also like we recently, and this is something coming up, but one of the things we inherited from Endgame is the work they were doing with EQL, which is the event query language. So Endgame created this open source query language, which we're now working towards making that as a first-class citizen in the Elasticstack, which is going to be really game-changing. Like, it's going to be really exciting. So that's like EQL itself has been out in the open for a while. So like super powerful stuff. There's actually a ton of stuff documented about it, an example like queries you can run. And I'm really excited to say that we're going to make that part of the stack. So even more just abstracting the potential complexities behind QueryDSL, because I'll be honest, like it's not particularly easy thing to write. But these days, like 99% of the users, unless you actually wanted to, you don't have to touch a single line of QueryDSL. So that's a good point to clarify. And there is free training. So like, especially during this whole pandemic situation we're in, made a lot more training for free than we had. So like you can get, there's plenty of getting started courses available totally free, typical virtual training, as well as even like, we have a whole totally public demo website where you can just go and see how the stack looks like, what the dashboard looks like, what the sim looks like. So there's all these things that we've done. And again, the community. So like you'll find hundreds of blog posts about how to write a performance search engine in Elasticsearch, how to bring data into Elasticsearch, how to write detection rules. So there's all the stuff that just the community has built, which has been phenomenal to see as well.
Yeah, you guys have it's almost become like a cult following. It's just, there's so many people that are just drunk on the Elastic Kool-Aid that want to talk about it, build community around it. And I mean, you guys are the epitome of really community development and community management and how to do it right. This is, do you think it's that sort of open source first mentality that's ingrained and so systemic in the Elastic culture that has helped you guys build such a huge community? Because it's global. I mean, you guys are from shore to shore, just a massive community of followers and supporters.
So I'd say definitely the open source nature of the product has, I don't think we'd be where we'd be if we didn't start off as open source, for sure. I'd say even the fact that the commercial code we do have, because obviously we do have commercial side of the company, it's still open coded. So you can still see all that commercial code under a different license. So you can't distribute it or manipulate it, but you can see the code. So we don't try and black box anything. But even how engaged our engineering teams are. So like we have a totally public Slack workspace. Anyone can join in and ask people of the community, but also people of Elastic. So like I'm on there, a ton of our engineering folks are on there. We have a discuss forum where, you get Elasticsearch employees answering questions, in their own time. Just people are so, we love the product so much that we just want to get the word out there. So it's not like, we have Elastic saying, oh, you have to go answer community questions, please do this. It's coming out of we want to do it.
It's not adversarial at all. It's very, and it's very antithetical to, the hacking scene back in the 90s where it was, it was sort of more elite than now kind of attitude, and really still is in many ways still that way. But you guys are very community focused, and it isn't adversarial at all. Like you can go there to the Slack channels, you can go there to the
totally
any kind of, and get help and make friends and really continue to expand that community.
Yeah, and we have a whole team, developer relations team, community team. We host meetups all the time. So like I have one coming up this week, in fact, where we just go and just talk, and we just listen to what people are trying to do. We help them, we answer questions, and this is, like you said, globally. We don't focus on a particular area of the globe, but like whether it's Europe, whether it's America, whether it's Asia, South America, like pretty much everywhere. And we have, because Elastic is such a distributed company, so like most of our teams are totally remote, way before this whole COVID situation. We're everywhere. So like literally you can be in somewhere in New Zealand, then you're going to find an elastician. You can be in South Africa and you're going to find an elastician. So like you can be in Malta and you find 3 elasticians, because we're actually 3 people from Malta, which is crazy, right? Like it's one of those things where the distributed nature of the company also has helped, because we're just everywhere and everyone's going to hear about Elastic in some way.
Yeah. So, okay, James, the $1 million question, what do you call the Elasticstack? Like, is it a SIEM? Is it log analytics? I've had so many religious debates. with so many people over what to call it, because you guys have the new SIM module that you guys are, and now, you know, in all fairness, it's not a full-fledged, and I don't think you guys expected to position it as such. And, you know, it's not like you guys are saying, you know, this is better than QRadar or any other particular SIM platform. It's just our SIM module we're developing and we've made available, and it has some SIM-like functionality. But like, what do you call an elk stack or elastic stack implementation?
I would still call it a stack. Like, it's a stack with.
You guys don't even like to refer to it as a SIM.
No, I wouldn't call it. It's because it's not just a SIM. Like, it's, if we had to call it just a SIM, you're missing out on all the other things you can be doing with it. So like our goal really is like, you deploy one technology to suit as many use cases as possible. We want to save you money, we want to save you resources. We don't want you to have to deploy multiple technologies to fix multiple problems. And that's actually another reason why it became so popular, because someone who wants to do you know, traditional search or logging can also be doing security. Because let's face it, most of the time, it's the same exact data. Like, we're looking at the same data sources. Whereas before, you'd have to sit down in front of a screen or two or three and look at multiple different products. You can now look at one. So I'd still call it a stack where we focus on different pillars. So again, search, observability, security. I wouldn't say Elastic is a SIM or Elastic is a logging tool. It's a stack where you can do many things. Like, it's one of those you know, multi-use case products. Think about it that way.
Yeah, you know, and I don't know if you read a lot, but one of my favorite business strategy books is a book written by two MBs out of Harvard, Kim and Mauborn. And they're two MBs out of Harvard Business School, that wrote this book. And it's this concept that you can eliminate your competition by making it irrelevant, meaning that you've got, you know, let's say all the SIEM vendors, all right, all the EDR vendors, all the NDR vendors, they're all clawing at each other, creating bloody red ocean, clawing for market share. And it's the concept that instead of staying in bloody red ocean, fighting over market share and over customers, you can create a brand new product category or a brand new market in blue ocean that basically eliminates your competition by making them irrelevant, right? So you guys are the prototypical example of a blue ocean strategy, where you guys aren't a SIEM, you guys aren't, you know, an EDR, you guys aren't these different, you know, platforms. You're really all of them, and you know, but not them in a sense. So it's really interesting to see you guys create and successfully execute on this blue ocean strategy at Elastic. You know, if you read the book, it talks about Cirque du Soleil, right? The creators of Cirque du Soleil, and I forget their names, didn't go out to compete against the circus. They wanted to redefine what the circus was. And this is a great example of what you guys are doing at Elastic. So yeah, it's interesting. So you basically refer to it as the stack, like a stack. You don't refer to it as a SIEM or log analytics tool. It's a stack.
Yeah. And because it's not doing the product justice if you just call it one thing. And unfortunately, this is why so many people get confused, because like when I started using Elastic as a stack, I had no idea that it started off as a search engine. And then I tried to, oh, actually, okay, that makes sense now why something is built like it is, because initially it was trying to solve the search problem. So yeah, like we won't be doing it justice if we call it a specific product. We can cover those use cases, so we call them use cases, but it's a stack at its core. I'll always call it a stack.
I like it. I like it. We'll refer to it as a stack too. I'll take on that that terminology. So okay, you're obviously pretty close to customer deployments. You know, you work at the company. You're, I'm sure, maybe even in some ways consulted or part of those deployments. I don't know what your day-to-day job is at Elastic, but I'm assuming you get a lot of information up from sales and also other colleagues within your organization about those migrations to Elastic. Why would a company migrate to Elasticstack from a traditional SIEM? Like, what is usually the impetus, the driving force behind that migration to Elasticstack?
So first of all, that's a great question, and this is what I do every day, right? So helping users make these migrations is part of my thing. And I think like there isn't one particular reason. I think there's a lot of reasons. One is, vendors have become ridiculous to work with. Like not one specific vendor, but just the whole, especially security situation. It's become like such a black box hole. Like where you had a couple of vendors who have been in the market for so long that everyone just went with them because it's what they did. It's the only names they knew, and they just went for it. They're on a quadrant or whatever. They just go, they see it, tried and tested, fine. However, after time, like that means that, things aren't innovating. There's new technologies coming out. They're not keeping up. So one of the main reasons is like we need a fresh start. We need to re-look at what we're actually doing for security, and Elastic seems to be the way to go. Another reason is, you can start trying Elastic for free without ever speaking to a salesperson for as long as you like. And that's another big reason why people even consider us, because, you could try something fresh in a production context with a ton of free stuff before ever speaking to someone at sales. And that's just such a refreshing idea. Like you literally never have to speak to anyone or talk about money just before you try and get used to the product.
No pressure.
Totally. Like you can just try it, like engage the community, do whatever you need. When you come to a point where, you know what, I can actually use that conversion feature. Maybe I can, relieve some of my teams by getting Elastic support. Then you can start to talk to us. But before that, you can evaluate for as long as you want. Another thing is, just you can deploy Elastic anywhere. Like there's no restriction, whether that's a cloud environment, whether that's our Elasticsearch service, whether that's on-prem, Kubernetes, Docker. We're designed to deal with all of that. So like there's no limitations there. So sometimes you get particular technology, it can only run there, it can only run here. We have none of those limitations. So that's sometimes another reason why people look to switch. You also have the concept of being totally data agnostic. Like sometimes it'd be surprised, like a person will make a migration purely because, they've shifted cloud provider and their current technology cannot ingest that particular data without being super expensive or super time consuming. So they start to look at something else. Even if it just starts off as something sometimes like what we call an augmentation product, where we live side by side with an existing technology and then potentially migrating totally. But at least, they solve their current problem. So like there's so many of these things. Another reason is, we're API driven. So yes, we have a fully fledged UI. You can do pretty much anything you want with it. But if you need APIs first and foremost, we have that, because at Elasticsearch, APIs came first, UIs came second. So like even just being able to do that is pretty phenomenal. Like it's not the other way around where someone creates a tool, creates UI, and then, API is an afterthought. API is first and foremost always. So for the developer community, that solves so many problems. Even like if you need to work it into, a CI/CD pipeline, if you have everything done automated and all that stuff, Elastic is typically the go-to tool because that's at its core. So like all these things are reasons why. There's sometimes it's a cost thing, like not always, because I don't always say it's going to boil down to cost or anything like that, but sometimes it is a cost thing. Sometimes it is just people want to try new things, like Elasticsearch is what the cool kids are using. Let's try that. So like there's so many reasons, but I think those are the more popular ones that I mentioned. It's something we deal with every day, and the approach we take is we want to make sure if you come to us to try and solve a particular use case, we want to make sure we can solve it for you. Like we're not the type of company that's going to say, oh yeah, get Elastic on board, spend all this money, we'll figure it out. We want to make sure that first and foremost, if you're trying to do something we know we're not the right technology for, we'll tell you. Like we'll be very upfront about it. Listen, this is not something we can do today probably. So, like as much as we'd love to help you, we don't want to waste your time. So we're also that kind of company. Like we're not going to shy away from telling you we're not the right solution for you, which is very rare because most of the times we are. But we're not afraid to be like that. We always try to put the person first or the customer first. Like we're that sort of company. And this is another reason why I was so excited to join Elastic, because I knew this stuff. Like they're not lying about it. Like they actually are like this and we are like that. And so we don't shy away from being honest at all. So like, there's all these things, a big combination of things.
Let's actually decompose the stack for a moment. So we've said that Elasticstack is a stack of these different technologies. So keep me honest here, just to help understand our audience who's never deployed it, never used it, how they can sort of envision how this works. So you have a server, maybe it's a Windows server, you have a Linux server, maybe you have some routers and switches, whatever, generating logs, generating events. Maybe you have a network IDS, a network detection response system, an endpoint detection response system, EDR. You've got all these events and alarms being generated on all these disparate devices that you would traditionally just point at a SIEM. Maybe that SIEM is a legacy SIEM running a SQL backend, right? Now, in the Elasticstack world, you would point those log sources at some kind of log shipper. And your guys' terminology, those would be beats. If it's a closed system, if it's an open system that you can actually double click a setup.exe file for beats, or if it's closed and you know, it's connecting remotely, somehow getting those events, like fileless agent. But you have these beats that are actually grabbing these events and shipping them out to then be received by Logstash. And Logstash is then taking those events, normalizing them, putting them into like a format that that Kibana then understands and presents that to the user. Can you kind of walk through the lifespan or journey of data from its original log source into the GUI that everyone sees within Kibana?
Sure. Okay. So that's a really good question. So, all right. So you have primarily at its heart, you have the data storage layer, which is Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch, you have a cluster. You should never run Elasticsearch as a single node thing. This is where your data is going to live, right? So whatever you end up doing, Elasticsearch is always going to be at the core. So if I had, let's say a couple of Windows machines, routers, whatever, first thing I want to do is get that data into Elasticsearch. And that's typically these days, 90% of the time is going to be done purely by beats. Most of the time, you don't even need Logstash. So beats, for those of you who aren't familiar, we have a family of 8 different beats as of today. 8 beats that we built, because then there's about 70 community ones. Beats are essentially, it started out as a file shipper. So I have this log, let's tail it, send it to Elasticsearch directly. You don't need to do anything else. Now we have the concept of modules. So if you say, for example, listen, I have a web server running Nginx or IIS or whatever it may be. I'm going to enable the module. The module knows where those logs sit. We're going to send them straight to Elasticsearch. That's all you need to do. So once you do that, it's going to pick up the data, send it to Elasticsearch. If you have something like a router which sends syslog or anything over TCP or something like that, FileBeat also does that these days. You can say, I'm going to listen on this port. So let's say, for example, you have Cisco switches or Cisco ASA firewalls. We have a Cisco ASA module. We have a Cisco module in general. So I'm going to enable that module. I'm going to ask FileBeat to listen on this specific IP on this port. That's it. The module is going to take care of all the parsing work. It's going to send all the data to Elasticsearch. It's going to show up in Kibana. Now, where Kibana comes in, Kibana is the visualization layer. So technically, if I had to be completely technically honest, Kibana is 100% optional. Like, you don't even need it. Kibana, again, 99% of people will use it. They're not going to write their own UIs. We do have some people who do. But Kibana in the background is just visualizing all the data that's in Elasticsearch. So this is why it's a stack, because it's multiple components, right? So once the data sits in Elasticsearch, I spin up a Kibana instance, and that in the background is just going to query Elasticsearch for the data that's in it. So if I wanted to query my logs from Cisco or whatever, I'm going to go either to one of the out-of-the-box dashboards or maybe one of the native views like the SIM, and it's immediately going to present the data that Elasticsearch is currently storing. That's it. So it starts off from a beat module typically, or a beat, sends it to Elasticsearch, visualized in Kibana. Obviously, you can have way more complex architectures than that. So you can have something like a message broker. So Kafka is extremely popular as an example. You can have Logstash. So Logstash was the traditional way to get data in. Beats actually came after. It's one of the reasons why we don't say the elk stack anymore, because Belk or ElkB or BElk, it doesn't sound great. So Logstash, there's still like a valid reason to use it. So if you need to do like certain data manipulations, if you need to retrieve data from a relational database and then send it to Elasticsearch, if you need to enrich data from RESTful APIs or things like that, this is where you're going to use Logstash. So Logstash is an ETL tool, extract, transform, and load. Logstash is also very commonly used as like a router for data. So you can say, listen, I need to send, as this data is coming from beats or from this other data source, I need to send it to Elasticsearch, but maybe I also want to send it to an S3 bucket or MongoDB. or another SIM. You can do that with Logstash, and it works off the concept of if this, then that. So it's pretty simple to use. So that's typically how the components are used. Like these days, literally, you can just get started with a beat on your machine, enable a module, send it straight to an Elastic cluster. Especially if you use something like Elasticsearch Service, you don't even have to worry about the stack part, just enable the beats. There are different beats as well. So we have a beat that looks at packet data. We have a beat that looks at Windows event logs that can then read from sysmon data. So like we've really been working hard on making that getting started experience much, much easier than it was. Like if you asked me this question 3-4 years ago, I'd say you're gonna have to roll up your sleeves and get parsing. But now we've taken a lot of that work out of the way. So that's typically the flow. Grab a beat, enable a module, send it to Elasticsearch, pop up a command, and the data is going to be there. And that's it.
Interesting. So do you actually see, and I'm kind of asking you to be a little bit of a fortune teller here, but do you see Elastic eventually phasing Logstash? Because in talking with like Mike Kernow, just any number of people who work with Elasticstack on a daily basis, a lot of them complain about, challenges around Logstash, and it's interesting because I think this is the first time I'm hearing that you can actually use beats in lieu of Logstash. Do you see Elastic moving in the direction of actually phasing Logstash out and eventually just using beats everywhere for network and system telemetry?
So I don't think it will ever be phased out, right? Because we have so many people using it and so many customers, and they've invested so much time in it. It would be really shameful if we had to eliminate it completely from our support. However, when we have discussions with someone who's being introduced to the stack, we don't actively talk about it unless they mention a specific problem they need to solve that we know only Logstash can do. So it's not going away. There's still a dedicated team engineering on Logstash and things like that. But our primary focus is let's get the user started as quickly as possible, as easy as possible. And most of the time, Logstash is going to be left out of that story because there's just no need for it. There are certain situations where you absolutely need Logstash, and we'll recommend it then. But most of the time, you're probably not going to want. You're probably not going to need it. Well, I wouldn't say you're not going to want it, but you're probably not going to need it.
Is it accurate to kind of say it's similar to syslog-ng, where I don't know if you've ever used or set up syslog-ng, but way back in the day, you could create, I remember creating these different log destinations in the syslog-ng comp file. You could send logs to this server or that server. I mean, is it accurate to say it's very similar to that, where Logstash is very well positioned if you want to send logs to an S3 bucket, to Elastic, to all these different locations? Maybe there's different consumers of that log data or event data. Maybe you want to send it to your MSSP, that sort of thing. Logstash is kind of like that traffic cop that kind of sends those events in those different directions.
I think that's a really good way to look at it. That's still like the primary reason why people would deploy Logstash, because they need the multiple output functionality. They need the ability to say flexibly what data to send to those outputs really easily. That's probably still going to be the primary use case for someone wanting to use Logstash. So yes, absolutely. And you compare that to syslog-ng. Again, there's nxlog, rsyslog. There's so many which just do something similar. But yeah, that's definitely a good way to look at it for sure.
Okay, let's get out of the weeds, talk a little bit more on the business side. I remember when the news hit that you guys acquired Endgame, and it rocked, I think, the market. Talk about that. Can you talk about that acquisition? Talk about, I guess now it's, I believe you guys have productized it as Elastic Endpoint. And then why don't we kind of segue into your guys' big announcement at Blackhat last week in regards to this?
Yeah, so it's been a really, really amazing journey since the Endgame team came along. So yeah, we did join forces with Endgame back in October 2019. And not only did we get the technology, we got the entire engineering team, right? So like we now as Elastic as a company had some of the best researchers in the world, some of the best anti-malware technology that we were just so excited to get our hands on it and make it a part of the stack. That's sort of been our focus. And you mentioned like what we've been working towards. Like our end goal was to have the endpoint technology as part of the stack. And I'm very excited to say that we're a release away from having an endpoint technology which is going to have a subset of features which is going to be totally free and open for anyone.
Oh my God.
you know,
we were talking about this before the show started. It was like, oh my God, like this is going to be huge. I can see this actually on CNBC, and you guys, I mean, one of my biggest complaints is that, the home user, where a lot of this crap on the internet is proxied through and ransomware, the only option for them for endpoint security is legacy antivirus. It's just, I'm Malwarebytes, now they couldn't, a lot of the, not that there's anything wrong with Malwarebytes, but, they had to use the McAfees of the world and the Malwarebytes of the world. And a lot of it, because the EDR companies have a minimum agent quantity where the minimum was 1,000 agents or 10,000 agents or whatever, so this is revolutionary. I mean, this is huge. What you guys have announced.
So it's like, first of all, it's the same validated technology that was in Endgame, right? So I want to make it clear that it's not like a watered down version of it. It is the same like file-based prevention that there was there. Plus, it's going to be part of the free distribution of the stack, right? So you, as a user, you can go download the Elasticstack and just enable endpoint, which is going to ship data straight to the free SIM. So like, not only do you get the endpoint, you get all the detection rules, you get the visualization workflow, you get the investigative workflow. So, not only the home user is going to benefit, but even those organizations which they don't have that $1 million SIM budget, right? Like this is, for me, like it's such a refreshing thought that protection for everyone is something we push. And that's actually true, right? And, adding the endpoint in there with that sophisticated level of malware detection, prevention, and also telemetry collection is going to be pretty game-changing. So again, look out for the next Elastic release. It's just going to be a first-class citizen in there. I'm just so excited for it. Like, and I want everyone to get their hands on it. Like, just go download it, try for free for as long as you ever want, and it's pretty phenomenal.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I should clarify that. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it isn't your typical freemium model where the free version is only for non-commercial use for home users. This is anyone, any enterprise, any company, anyone who wants to use endpoint security for free will be able to download this and use this.
For sure. Like, just for people who aren't aware of our licensing model, so you have the open source distribution, so the Apache 2 license, which is 100% open source. You can modify the heck out of the code, redistribute it, resell, whatever you want. Then we have the basic tier, which is 100% free, but falls under what we call an Elastic license. So as an organization, as a home user, you can run the stack under the basic license for free. You just cannot make commercial profit out of it. You cannot resell it. You cannot modify the code. And then there are the commercial licenses. But the endpoint technology is going to fall under that basic tier. So anyone can run it for as long as you like, whether you're a small business or whatever, or big business, home user, doesn't matter. You can run basic for free for as long as you ever need.
That's I'm still waiting to I'm waiting for the gotcha or the small print. It's amazing.
No, there isn't. And like, even, again, it's not just the endpoint, which is a huge part of this, but the SIM technology itself. So like, in fact, in the next release, because endpoint's going to be part of it, I think you're going to like this, but we're dropping the SIM terminology just because it's going to be way more than just SIM. But you get, we're going to have over 200 detection rules. So it's like, and these are built by the same research team. So it's not like, have a small part of the business which is, oh, this is the free stuff. We can it's the same level of rules, the same level of sophistication that you get. So there's so much you get. It's crazy. Like, when you think about it, it's unheard of. So I'm just super excited for it. I can't wait for everyone to just go ahead and try it and use it and not just use it, but start protecting themselves. So like, this is what I'm excited about, that hopefully this is going to make the internet a much safer place for everyone. Like, forget Elastic. That's the whole point of it, right? We just want to make the internet a safer place for anyone. That's our whole goal.
This is amazing. Yeah, and suffice to say, I mean, Endgame, now Elastic Endpoint, it's all powered by machine learning. It's not legacy detection signatures like your snort signatures or emerging threat rules. This is groundbreaking, contemporary detection capabilities with ML models supervised, unsupervised models, whatever it may be. So this is sophisticated detection and prevention for free now.
Absolutely. And like for anyone who's interested, so this is, we get this verified, right? So, we can talk about it all day, but, AV comparatives and all those, this is the same version of that they've been testing. So like you can go see how efficient it is. You can go see how performant it is. You can go see the rate of detections, the rate of false positives. So like we don't hide any of that. So whatever is on those reports is what you'll be getting. So like, that's a really good point. It's like industry, it's up there. Like again, it's not something we're just cooked up really quickly. It's been tried and tested and built by some of the best research team, anti-malware research team on the planet. So it's really, really exciting.
And I want to just kind of set the stage here and help people understand really how quickly you guys have actually grown. How many installations do you guys have now, or rollouts, or,
So, last I checked, we were over 1 billion downloads, right? So like it's crazy. That's just people downloading from our stack.
A huge percentage of the planet.
It's, I mean, it's a lot, like over 1 billion downloads. It's crazy. But even like just our, our customer base, like we're hosting like over 30,000 clusters in our SaaS platform, which is phenomenal to see. And like, so we're everywhere. Like it's one of those things where we'd love to be able to keep an accurate number somewhere, but it's almost impossible because people can download, we get certain stats and telemetry, like from especially people like putting Docker images and things like that. But in reality, it's hard to get to that fixed number. That we just know it's over 1 billion downloads.
That's amazing. I'm really excited about what you guys are doing there. I'm really excited about this announcement. I want to definitely have you back on the show when that hits the street, so you can talk about it more, and maybe we can even walk through some screen shares of its capabilities.
Sure.
I definitely want to continue to follow your journey. But how can people learn more about Elastic and learn more about Elastic Endpoint, learn more about you, like reach out to you or find you guys on Slack?
So yeah, I mean, there's a couple of ways, right? So first of all, if you go to our website, elastic.co, not .com, .co, there's a ton of information there, just a free training, do whatever you need to do. If you have questions specifically, like technical questions, there's our discussion forum, so discuss.elastic.co. There's our Slack workspace. So if you go to, I have a shorthand URL, which is ela.st/Slack. That takes you to the sign up page for our Slack community. You can ask any question you want over there. We have specific channels for the different offerings as well. We're very active on Twitter and all social media platforms, so you can reach out there, but or just reach out through one of the emails on the website as well. So if you do have like a sales question, or if that's something you wanted to ask or get more specific info there, you can. I would say the best way to learn though is to try it. So there's a couple of ways to do this. You can download the free version, play with it as long as you like, any form of download you can think of. If you don't want to get to that stage, our cloud trial is 14 days free. You don't even need a credit card. And that's probably the easiest way, because like you can literally just spin up a cluster, run a few beats, send data to there, experiment with it and run it. Plus, we also have a totally open demo website. So if you go to demo.elastic.co, it's the latest version of the stack. You can go in there, see what the dashboard looks like, see what the SIM looks like, see what the different apps inside of Kibana look like. So that's also a really, really good place. So there's just so much to start. Just don't hold back in asking questions. Like it's like, if you're starting out and you've never seen Elastic before, it can look intimidating just because of how much info there is and how many blog posts there are and how far back they go. And our rate of release, our rate of innovation is ridiculously fast. So like a blog from a year ago, a blog from 2 years ago is outdated.
Oh, wow.
Totally outdated. So
Yeah.
like our typical release,
no questions. People shouldn't feel
ask whatever you need to ask. Like honestly, we're super happy to help. Again, like feel free to reach out to me on Slack. It's easy, James Spiteri. Like I'm very active there. It's part of my one of my Slack workspaces I'm always on. But a lot of the engineering teams are on there as well. So just any question you have, we get people asking questions from, hey, I'm trying to get this data from X system, or I need to run on Kubernetes. What's the best option for me? Like we'll answer you. And the community will answer you as well, not just us. So just go ahead and ask anything. Just ask questions. There's also, on our website, there's a ton of webinars. So, we host webinars all the time. about different topics, whether that's security, observability, search, and there's quite a few in different languages as well. So if you're not a native English speaker, don't worry about that. So we're all over the place. So you find things in Spanish, Italian, Russian. There's pretty much everything. So loads of content out there, but ask questions. Like that's the most important part.
I like to ask my guests something about them that my audience may not know. I'm assuming that's not a green screen behind you, that those are real guitars and basses. So you want to maybe tell the audience more about yourself that may not be immediately evident, like you play the guitar apparently.
Yeah, sure. So like I'm a big fan of progressive metal. So like bands like Periphery, Tesseract, Dream Theater, all those. I write music, so you'll find me on YouTube. There's a couple of songs there.
Oh, wow.
There's more than one James Spiteri, so like you have to recognize my face or my guitars. I used to be in a band. We're not that active anymore because we're all way too busy. But music is a big passion of mine outside. It's not just Stack and not just being a security geek. I live in a tiny island of Malta. You might not know where that is. So it's a tiny island in the Mediterranean. Recently I bought a boat. So like I've been really enjoying the water and just spending time with my wife. But yeah, that's a bit about me. Again, I'm super security nerd. Just really like helping people, solving problems. So feel free to reach out to me on any platform you can think of. I'll be there ready to answer your questions. So
awesome. Well, James, it's been awesome having you on the show again. I love having you as a guest. You're one of my most favorite people to nerd out with. So
Thanks,
love it when you're telling the story on Elastic. So we will definitely have you back when the free Elastic EDR Elastic endpoint hits the street. And I know, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no anticipated release date yet, but it is coming. Most likely sometime in 2020 or 2021. So
I can say it's around the corner. So definitely before 2021. We're going to start off with a subset of features, and then we'll just keep progressing with every release. But from day one, what I can say is you're going to get that malware score, features, the file-based prevention and detection. That's all made there for day one. And then with each release, we'll keep iterating on that, but it's pretty much around the corner. That's the most I can say right now.
Okay, I gotta say, this is definitely, in 20 years, the first time I've ever heard of a company acquiring a company and then taking its product and making it free. That's groundbreaking. I'm shocked. It's definitely an exciting time to be at Elastic, and understand why you care so much about the company and brand. So again, thanks for being on the show today, and we will definitely be having you back. Thanks again.
That's awesome. Thanks, Alyssa. Always a pleasure.
Awesome, James.